Globe and Mail. Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, hi, thanks. Hi, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to ask about the homeless encampments issue. You did make some comments this morning at council. There's this path forward letter that many, not just activists, but agencies that work with the homeless have endorsed, and a lot of it seems to echo things the city says it is doing. Is there nothing to be gained from taking a pause and trying to build the trust, go out there again with outreach workers and try and get people to come inside without having to resort to the kind of police presence that we saw at Trinity Bellwoods?
Well, Jeff, we have not stopped in our efforts to work with people experiencing homelessness to convince them on a day-by-day, person-by-person, place-by-place basis to come inside and accept alternate forms of housing other than an encampment. Because we continue to maintain the fact, and I think it's just true, that these encampments are not safe, they're not healthy, and they're illegal. And so we've continued outreach workers going out and doing many of the things that are talked about in the letter, and the letter is signed by people I know and people who I respect. But it's signed in some respects almost suggesting that we haven't done any of that or don't continue to do any of that and simply rely on somebody calling the police and saying, you should go in there and deal with this. The only reason the police were ever involved in any of the previous activities were because people who were there to protest the fact that these encampments would in any way be altered were causing a danger to the city workers and the people experiencing homelessness because of unrest that was going on those sites. Otherwise, there would have been need for nothing more than maybe a handful of police officers just to be there to make sure people didn't interfere with the contact that we were trying to make on a continuous basis with people experiencing homelessness. And we've had so much progress. I mean, again, it doesn't make any sense that if we hadn't been doing this kind of collaborative approach all the way along, including 20,000 visits plus to these sites to work collaboratively with people experiencing homelessness, we wouldn't have had the success we've had in moving 1,500 plus people into better kinds of housing. And so, of course, we're going to take a look at the letter, but many of the things we're doing now are things that are mentioned in that letter. We're already doing them. We just don't get any credit for doing it because it doesn't suit the nature of some of the argument that is made by some, not by all. So we'll carry on with that work. But as I've said many times before, I also have a responsibility. The city government also has a responsibility to pay some attention to the representations we get from those citizens who, for example, are being denied the use of their parks. We've had one park where the summer programs for kids in a very needy area have been canceled because of the fact that park is almost entirely taken up with an encampment. And a lot of these structures in that encampment are presently empty, but there are activists who refuse to allow us to remove those empty structures, thus freeing up part of the park for other use. So that can't carry on indefinitely. I'm sorry, and I regret that, but we've continued to do what I've said from the beginning, which is to adopt a compassionate and yet firm approach as to how we have to deal with this. And we're continuing to this day and on this day to be having people going out and visiting and collaborating with people experiencing homelessness to try and get them to a better place.
I wanted to follow up, I guess, by asking something that's been raised, which is some confusion, I guess, about the operation at Trinity Bellwoods or the encampment clearings that might be to come. That it's all being coordinated by the Emergency Operations Center. Is that right? By the COVID Emergency Operations Management team with Chief Pegg. Why isn't it shelter and housing? Why wouldn't they be leading that operation?
The fact is, it's a collaborative approach so that we can be sensitive to all of the different issues. So there has to be representation there, obviously, from the shelter and housing group, which is probably the lead group in the context of making sure there is indoor housing available for people, that there are the supports in place at those indoor housing locations, including hotels. So they're still integrally involved. But what we also did was put other people around the table that would be involved, including the parks, forestry and recreation people. Obviously, the people involved in the enforcement of the law are there really just to make sure that that end of it is covered, and various other city officials, so that all you're hearing is that there's a kind of a table that's been established to deal with the entire issue, and those people have been collaborating with one another right from the beginning in this, because we knew that trying to to have the encampments cleared, which started with getting alternate forms of housing made available to people who were resident in the encampments and other supports that they needed, was obviously a precursor as far as we possibly could to having the encampments no longer continue to be in the parks, which we had previously said, based on the expert advice we got, were unsafe and were unhealthy and were, of course, illegal.